So theory-wise, OS, he's a guy I like. He makes good content. He literally said Classic Plus will never work. And this statement just feels like a falsity to me, not because he's technically wrong, but because TWoW has proven that Classic Plus can and will work. Old school RuneScape has proven that Classic Plus can and will work. So we're gonna dive into his video and see why. It's 30 minutes long. So I truly want to see why he doesn't believe Classic Plus doesn't work.
Listen up, everybody. I have bad news. I don't think Blizzard knows what Classic Plus is. In fact, I don't even think World of Warcraft players know what Classic Plus is, what it could or should.
My opinion is the only opinion that matters. My Classic Plus idea is going to be amazing and phenomenal. What is it? There's 100 videos on my channel talking about what Classic Plus is, could, and should be. So you guys can go check it out there. But TWoW, essentially.
Should look like, whether it'll deliver leveling focused content or just be a geared treadmill for the endgame, or if any of these options are even possible. Will it just be an incremental release of new raids and dungeons until we've power crept anything and everything from 2006? Will it be zone expansions, leveling overhauls, new professions, all of the above? Or will it get inspired by old school RuneScape and integrate a more curated sandbox methodology to its design? But to be honest with you, I think none of these things will work, and here's why. Think back for a moment to a different time. 2019, Classic WoW just released.
To be fair, if you go back to 2019, the world was hyped for this because we were in BFA and then we got Shadowlands. So Classic popped the fuck off, and then COVID and everything that could have made Classic WoW a good experience made Classic WoW a good experience. The Classic WoW had the benefit of the doubt of like being like lucky in like the timing and sensibilities of it. But this has been semantical so far. I don't want to say it's like, why did I say semantical? It's not even a real, it might be a real word. It's like me saying, come here and kiss me on my hot mouth. I'm feeling romantical like that one meme. But the point is, Classic Plus needs to be a game that prioritizes the classic world, the classic feeling, and the classic content and design, whilst modernizing it for a larger audience and a larger community.
And even then, the idea of what comes next has been a constant, a conversation in-game and not. And for the longest time, Blizzard has been about as vague about it as one would expect Blizzard to be. Truthfully, just like the players, they had no idea, and were comfortable in allowing their subscribers to relive the nostalgia with a few minor changes, not just of classic vanilla Warcraft, but also the expansions preceding it. Now we're past the original game's player peak and are seeing an eerily similar trend get repeated once more. This isn't
Yep. Mr. Pandaria is definitely not what classic players wanted. And you misunderstand what I say by modernize. I don't mean modernize as in put retail features in classic. I meant dual spec. You know, a better client. You know, have Rend be available for the Alliance with their own version, or remove world buffs. Tweak the consumes. There doesn't need to be that many consumes. Having new zones and new dungeons and new raids. Modernize the game with some class balancing. Probably having taunt, for example. Stuff like that.
surprising. Blizzard has essentially opted to repeat history. No one should be scratching their heads over why the active player counts aren't booming. And now their backs are thoroughly up against a wall, facing the very real possibility of labeling Warlords of Draenor classic and releasing what is widely considered to be the worst expansion in the game's history. They need to think of something, anything, and fast. All of those quiet conversations from 2019 suddenly need to be acknowledged, actually acknowledged, not in a snide way like in Season of Discovery, but in a legitimate way, because most of the players left playing Classic aren't likely to transition to whatever retail WoW has become. Players and
this is true as well. The retail gameplay systems definitely aren't classic, but like Mr. Pandaren Anniversary aren't that hot as either for me right now. Like TBC Anniversary sounds hype, Classic Plus sounds hype, but like I don't want to play Anniversary for the 6th time. So for me, I've been skipping Anniversary. Sod's dead. So the only option for me as a WoW player is to play retail. And yeah, the War Within Season 3 is good. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having fun. It's been an enjoyable experience. But for a lot of people, it's definitely not going to be a super smooth, fast experience, all things considered. Like, it's not going to be right up their alley, right up their vibe of the kind of content they truly want.
Content creators alike are known to wax poetic about the future. All the unreleased content that Blizzard wanted to add in 2004.
Ah, I'm in this video. Okay, look. There's Balula. There's Ebonheart. There's my man Rox. There's Willy. There's Metagoblin. And then there's fuck, he's an OG too. How am I forgetting his name? He's the guy that speaks super slowly and like it's like he talks about everything, you know. He's done that recent series. How am I forgetting his name? I'm literally subbed to him. I've been watching him for like 8, 9. Mad Season. Holy shit! How did I forget Mad Season's name? But yeah, no. I can't believe I'm considered one of these guys.
But simply didn't have the time. Yet today I have the same issues with those.
I've made these videos as well. These aren't mine. These are other people's, but I've made videos just like this.
Old conversations from 2019 as I did back then. None of them, for whatever reason, acknowledge the fact that World of Warcraft may just not fit this model, this classic plus concept. On its
I fully and vehemently disagree with him. But I want him to actually share his opinion and thoughts before I truly deep dive why I disagree with everything he's saying, because he might actually have really valid points and I could be completely wrong.
Surface, implementation looks fairly simple, right? This worked, so do more of it. But why did this work? In a few of my videos, I said that Classic, the original, still holds up today because of the emergent gameplay that it birthed. From Dire Maul tributes to guild collusions and world buff orchestration, as well as the simpler things like lining up to wait for mob spawns and random pickup groups to raid a gnoll camp. The leveling.
This was so cool when I played 2019 and this happened. For the first time when like Alwyn Forest, when everybody was queuing up to kill the guy. This was like, this quest here is when you have to kill Garth or Gareth or whatever the Fires Bandits guy's name is in Northshire Abbey.
Experience is the best in any theme park MMO ever, and the interpersonal connections forged in the fires of tedious molten core runs were unlike anything in the genre, back then and as 2019 proved, still today. But if there's anything that Blizzard has fundamentally lacked the capacity to acknowledge, let alone replicate, is that emergence. Blizzard is compulsively obsessed with balancing out every
100% correct. Fun detected, fun removed. We saw this in Legion Remix recently. Mr. Pandaria Remix, massive hit. Legion Remix PTR drops by, guess what happens? Legion Remix PTR drops by, and they fucking nerfed the shit out of it. They took Remix, a whole system designed around being fun, fast, powerful, strong. And you know what they do? They gutted it, made it slow, grindy, boring. Like, what is it with fun detected, fun removed? Who looks at people having fun and says, not on my watch? It pisses me off sometimes. And Demilla on retail side of those idea to hammer last night. Imagine to refresh old zones, take Legion's heroic outdoor zones and add maybe world bosses on a few hour respawn with mandatory war mode on. I do think it could potentially work, but the design philosophy on how it implements into the game world, into the zones, into the new features is very important. So I can't say yes or no. Oh, you're talking about retail. Yeah, for retail, absolutely, that'd be hella based. For retail, wow, that'd be really fun. I thought you meant for Classic Plus.
Single aspect of player-driven creativity and labeling it an exploit. Dire Maul runs would not exist in any version of WoW other than Classic and maybe TBC. I don't want to make this video about all the pitfalls of time-gated slop bullshit plaguing retail WoW's otherwise exceptional gameplay, so let's instead mention the fact that Season of Discovery was closer in philosophy to retail than it was to Classic.
True.
The gameplay was still Classic WoW, sort of. They had some creative ideas for class design, and some not so creative shoehorning
yeah.
of abilities from future expansions. They repurposed dungeons as raids, which was neat, and they incrementally released the game with specific level brackets in mind. On one hand, this replicated the classic beta they claim to be inspired by, but on the other, it is more closely aligned to expansion launches. The level cap increases, the amount of leveling to do is very, very minimal and quick, with tons of catch-up mechanics to make sure that you're never more than a dozen hours away from doing the single new raid available with your friends for like a few weeks before fading back into the brush like Homer Simpson, only to return back for the next expansion phase. While this was a fun experiment and just about as inconsequential as anything else in WoW, considering most people playing it knew their beloved characters would be prone to rotting on these servers after a year had passed.
Every single person, I prayed to the gods of the vines that Phase 9, Phase 10, Phase 11, Phase 12 would keep happening. They'd keep testing features and testing content. And then it's dead. People have reforged Ashbringer, the legendary weapon. They have all this gear, all this content, all these characters, everything maxed the fuck out on Season of Discovery. And saw it drop from 80k down to 3,000 consecutive raiders. 3,000 people remain, chat. 3,000 people remain. You know how that makes most people feel? 3,000. That's what's left. It's a graveyard, and most people will never ever touch the graveyard again.
Or maybe they'd give you the honor of transferring them to whatever incarnation of Classic they deemed acceptable. But now, it's over, and Blizzard needs to, for the first time in a long time, have the difficult conversation of vision and philosophy. What is Classic Plus as a project? It can't just be another iffy year of throwing half-baked ideas patchworked together by a tiny development team and seeing what sticks, especially when...
Well, we know that's not going to happen, and I've said this before, but currently, if you look at it, there is give or take 45 to 60 developers working on Classic Plus as of right now. I would even say maybe even something as high as 70 people. I'm not sure on the exact numbers. We know it's over 45 people, but that's on like the lower end as a guess, as an estimate. So like when you consider that, you can see just how big the team has become from Saul's launch of 10 fucking employees over to where we are right now.
Backed by the ever-concerning reality that all of it may be deleted and forgotten. After all, an MMORPG is a promise of persistence. It's the understanding that you are expected to put in a lot of time doing something and not have that time be devalued by future updates or game closures. Now today, that's not so much the case, as MMOs have become as fleeting as Diablo seasons, but I think WoW players were reminded of what an MMO actually feels like by having to exist in a version of their beloved world that wasn't perverted by some modern design sensibilities. For the first time, some players...
See, I don't agree with the perverted statement there, and I get what he's saying with modern gaming, modern MMOs are definitely a perversion on the true MMO spirit. I said this before, but Retail WoW is a really fun game. Retail WoW is a really enjoyable game. Retail WoW is really phenomenal at the moment, but Retail WoW is not an MMORPG. Retail WoW is a multiplayer online RPG that is massive in player scope, in content, but it is not a massively multiplayer online game. There's a shit ton of people, there's a shit ton of content, but if you choose, you can play at a very high level and very enjoyable level without ever talking or playing with another person. An MMO fundamentally should require you to play with a shit ton of people and be fundamentally baked and built into the design philosophy of the game that you have to communicate, interact, and play with people. And we do not have that in modern retail. You can play with people. Mythic Plus, raiding, developers, like all this stuff that you could do and potentially, like, you know, play and enjoy. It's available, but it is not a necessity in the slightest order. And that's what drops the retail from being an MMO to just being a multiplayer online RPG that's massive in scope.
We're able to experience what having player agency feels like. I think the eye-opening moment for a lot of those experiences.
And yeah, you should be able to get your sod stuff for player housing. Season Discovery should merge into retail. Mr. Pandara should merge into retail. Honestly, Anniversary should merge into Era. TBC Anniversary should become TBC Era. Wrath Era servers drop, and don't fucking touch that shit again. You should completely ignore and stop touching Classic relaunches and just fully focus on Classic Plus. Let's keep watching.
Classic for the first time wasn't some general realization of exploration or simple classes, but the broader understanding that at one point, Azeroth felt like an actual place, somewhere to exist in rather than log into. Now, I don't want to just let that semi-meaningless phrase sit there, so let me elaborate as bluntly as I can. This was, in part, because it was grindier, more long-term, and demanded you spend your time playing rather than logging on Reddit and complaining about how much you need to play. Sometime in the next 20 years, there was a player and developer-driven realization that MMOs, which require a lot of time, effort, and commitment, are actually bad. Eventually,
that's a truth, and something a lot of people may not realize is that the modern gamer, the modern player, the modern MMO enjoyer and community enjoyer, there's a reason MMOs have started falling off for games, for example, like Roblox, Fortnite, League of Legends, Dota. So many games have eaten into World of Warcraft and the MMO player base's pool because it's an ever-shrinking audience that doesn't grow. It's not getting bigger, it's not getting like more populated. It's a shrinking audience that has a very, very loving community that is not growing. And that is a huge problem.
Due to this, we landed where we are today with retail, and quite frankly, most of the genre, where MMOs have become jobs, not because they demand 8 hours a day, but because they meticulously curate how long you can and can't play and earn something from that play. And the few MMOs that don't feel this way, such as old school RuneScape that give their players the agency to set their own goals and spend dozens, hundreds, thousands of hours to achieve them without ever devaluing those achievements with future content, have been seeing a major resurgence. In a funny way, Classic WoW's success kind of laid the groundwork for that, the broad realization that this genre exists as time does. It is as inextricably bonded to the concept of giving it your time as you would anything in the real world. There's a reason MMOs were synonymous with...
And that's also the reason why so many Classic players abandoned Classic, so many Classic creators abandoned Classic WoW to go work on, play old school RuneScape. God damn it, I'm so sick of these fucking bots on Kick. Jesus Christ, I gotta ban them every single time. Can I get some messages in chat real quick so the fucking chat thing in the corner just pushes it up? Just type some 1s or 2s or some random shit, everybody, so I can get this stupid Kickbot messages removed from chat. And just type random shit. Let's get chat going a little bit. Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate that.
Second lives, not because you could play a character.
Right, but what I was saying was that, okay, chat, y'all can stop with the 69s now. Thank you. Bring Medina back. Medina's still banned for another hour. Remember, 1 sub, 1 spin. Medina's banned for an hour still. But I will say, going back to what I was saying, a lot of Classic creators went to old school RuneScape, and a lot of the Classic players went to old school RuneScape because old school RuneScape is never ending, formally growing, and continues to grow. If you want to bring Medina back, you gotta pay the sub cost. 1 sub was 1 hour, so you gotta pay a sub to untake the hour away and Medina can come back. Just do what every Kick streamer doesn't pay the bots. No, I have my 15 on Kick. I'm happy with that. Twitch and YouTube is doing amazing, so I'm just like, I don't need bots. I don't need bots. I'll pass. But a lot of Classic creators went to old school RuneScape because the community wants that kind of gameplay. They want that kind of content. They want the ever progressing, ever continuing discussion They want the ever continuing content cycle of classic WoW, of expanded content. For example, we'll use a classic WoW item, Onslaught Girdle. You can use Onslaught Girdle from the first week of MC up until the end of Nax, and in Nax there is an upgrade to Onslaught Girdle from Resuvius. But you don't need it, because it is an upgrade, but not a ginormous upgrade. And that's the thing, is like on retail WoW, when I go from Season 2 to Season 3, everything is an upgrade. Completely and utterly. When I go from Season 3, Keystone Legend, to Season 1, Midnight WoW, everything is an upgrade. And actually, it's the other way around. Jack here's Guzu was the first person to go, not Soda. Guzu started that trend. He kickstarted that trend. And yeah, Battle Rap. I know old school RuneScape is not for everybody, but I know a lot of people do love old school RuneScape.
But because you genuinely needed to be that character, spend time as them. That's why it's massive, that's why it's multiplayer, and that's why it's online. That's why there are open worlds and hundreds of things to do in them, and why of all video game genres, it's the one that had the most people form faceless relationships with one another through. Finally, whether you have 1 or 10 hours a day to invest, you want your investment to mean something. While Classic WoW provided that initially, now we're back in that questionable limbo of where the hell are we going? A lack of reassurance is an MMO non-starter. That's why people are hesitant to jump back into a dying game, because why should you invest thousands of hours into something that is on the precipice of non-existence? Thankfully,
thank God he said that. And I've said this before. I love the classic devs. I appreciate what they're doing. I know they're trying their best. I don't even think it's their fault. But Microsoft needs to give them a marketing fucking intern. We need somebody to communicate with us. I miss the weekly communication. I'm not saying every week needs to be amazing or top tier thing, but like having the devs come on once a month, do a 10-minute conversation, a 10-minute video. What's up with Classic this month? Hey guys, we've been working on TBC anniversary a bit, yada yada. We got this and this plan. We're thinking about doing some changes, but hey, let us know in the comments and what kind of changes you'd like to see. Yada yada. We'll see you guys next month for the next update. This is coming and mop in the meantime, yada yada, an anniversary. Enjoy yourselves. Peace. Like a 5-10 minute video once a month. I'm not asking for a lot here, but that would be phenomenal.
We have the players to give some feedback. Unfortunately, to create a good game, you need agile, responsive, intelligent developers to take in that feedback and synthesize a correct answer. If game design was as easy as just implementing player feedback, then making games would be so unfathomably simple philosophically. But it's not. And as I said in a prior video, players are like patients at a hospital. They know when something is wrong, but they may not know how to cure it. Players know something is wrong. Very, very wrong. And now they are saying all kinds of stuff in an attempt to cure it, because as a hospital or a doctor, Blizzard has been dead silent for years. They have been leaving us on red, and we're dying over here. So while we have that one Classic Plus survey and the vague assurance that maybe it'll happen,
Thank you for the mute. I unmuted, chat. I unmuted. I'm sorry. What I was saying was, I 100% agree with this, but what I'm saying is, the vague assurances are great and all. The vague assurances are amazing, but like, come on, man. Like, I just want... The vague assurances are killing me. Like, why can't they just say Classic Plus is coming, that's not the name, we'll announce it at BlizzCon, we'll see you then? How is this one sentence going to hurt Classic Plus's future? I need this shit so badly. Like, a single announcement. One announcement is all I need.
and eventually, the more important question is, what will happen eventually? How will it happen eventually? What is Classic Plus to you? The easiest and most common response is
Necrotic is a wild statement. They'll time gate your cancer treatment is diabolical. Absolutely diabolical.
it's just more classic, more dungeons, more raids, more endgame content, maybe a few unfinished zones in the original game, and that's sort of it. This will only work in the short term. This is an MMO, and what you're saying Blizzard should do is release the same thing over and over again. This is both something that I think will kill the game, but also something I very well see Blizzard doing, because if there's anything they are competent at, it's making instanced content. Even then, what does that look like? Are we settling for expansions with extra steps, new raids that eventually power creep the old ones? Or if you aren't for power creep, what would itemization even look like half a decade later? Would there be raids with no good loot for certain classes because that well has run dry? Or are we going full send on power scale? Will we be critting for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, like in retail?
So my theory on this with Classic Plus is Classic Plus has way bigger raids, or Classic has way bigger raids and like content than Old School RuneScape does in that regard. Because I've seen Old School RuneScape raids, you know, people getting in there like the fire cape stuff and stuff like that. It's a different kind of endgame. So for Classic Plus, I think it needs to be every 3 or 4 years. Let's just say every 5 years. The gear gets downgraded to dungeon, like your gear gets locked and you gotta start again from like say molten core eye level but fresh loot. I don't know, it's not a great idea. That was a pretty terrible idea. Just a suggestion off the top of my head. There are ways to go about it. I'm just not sure how they could truly really go about it though. So it'll be interesting to see what really happens.
Stats can occasionally be multiplicative, especially in Classic where secondary stats often scale additively with their percent-based implementation. I know that's a very granular example, but what does this item that gives plus 2% critical strike chance look like in a decade's time? Do new items give plus 20% critical strike chance, or are they still just as weak? Neither are tenable options. I don't see a reality where Blizzard is releasing copious amounts of dungeons and raids and not power creeping the game to all hell. Not because they're incompetent, but because when you have a game that's purely motivated by combat and power progression, you need to actually motivate the combat and power progression. Just look at Season of Discovery, a version they pretty bluntly, if slightly sardonically, called Classic Plus More. Other players have realized that just adding expansion content minus the systems and bracketed levels doesn't really change anything other than make more boring versions of expansions, so instead they look toward the single success story in this space, Old School RuneScape. I call OSRS a curated sandbox, as I don't believe it is exactly what one thinks of when they think sandbox MMO. It's not open-ended, and it's not only emergent. It's curated. The developers explicitly develop content to synergize with other content. The skills interconnect, the bosses build on one another, and eventually the additive nature.
I still think user-generated content is the direction to go. I think user-generated content is the right direction, is the right future, because he's not wrong. The curated sandbox element is great for Old School RuneScape because of smaller content cycles and content things, like different kinds of content. But for Classic Plus, I think they should do Classic Plus, 5-6 years official Classic Plus, hit the peak, and then launch UGC, the Fortnite version, or this or that, like or the Roblox, where you can make as much content as you want. People can jump into those. You can take your character, no loot, but you can earn achievements and this and that and all these different things in these like UGC servers. I don't know. There's ways to go about it. But saying there's no way they can do it at all, in my opinion, is completely wrong.
Of the game creates for dozens of different paths you can choose to go on at any given moment. While a sandbox is open-ended conceptually, Old School RuneScape is more rigid in its structure, and the paths designed are done so, more often than not, intentionally. A curated sandbox. WoW isn't a sandbox, curated or not. It's a theme park, meaning the systems that hold it together are vertical and driven by erasure. it's inherently a more shallow and immediate game. That's phrased negatively, but there's a reason it became the most popular MMO ever. It works, and it can be incredibly fun. But these systems...
That's actually something people don't realize, is that World of Warcraft, when it launched, became popular because it was the easiest MMO. Every other MMO punished you terribly so. And even to this day, WoW is one of the easy MMOs. It has a very low skill floor, but a very high skill ceiling. So at the lowest level, anybody can play. And that's why there's so much more single player content, delve, story mode, raiding, all these things where you can just play by yourself. They're even adding the dungeon companion so you can do heroics, maybe even mythic zeros someday with AI helping you.
Don't have the infrastructure needed to become additive in the same way a sandbox is. If old school RuneScape content looks like this, a large orb of things to do with every new update adding a new growth onto it, World of Warcraft looks like this. In Classic anyway, where the leveling is broad and driven by your choice of zones and dungeons and grinds, and then narrows down significantly once you hit max, as you are given one of essentially 3 options. Grind professions for combat and gold, do raids for combat and loot, and PvP for combat and loot. You can do all of these things, but they aren't particularly deep or interconnected, are they? They're just kind of all roundabout means of doing the one thing that WoW has always been good at: killing shit. Even professions are all just a means to that end. The depth of content in WoW stems, as I've said, from emergent gameplay, roleplay, open world battles, guild drama, world buff organizations, self-prescribed solo challenges for gold, and etc, etc, etc. These aren't pieces of developed content, but novel, creative approaches in engagement.
The Venruki versus Asmin, and was it Venruki versus Asmin? I don't remember if it was them who did the Taran Mill versus South Shore combat. I know it was Venruki versus somebody, but I could have swore it was Venruki versus Asmin. But this kind of emergent gameplay was peak fucking gameplay. This doesn't happen often, especially not in a game like, in this context, Anniversary, or, But they do have things, emergent gameplay happens. For example, White Mane or the Arcanite Reaper reroll. Players do things to make things interesting and enjoyable, but it's not always a one-to-one.
Driven entirely by the player base and accepted by the developers. Instanced content on its own in a vacuum doesn't drive this. You can see what I mean by looking at retail or even Season of Discovery. There really aren't any good stories to tell because your only method of communication is driven by insular experiences, and any kind of strategic emergence is often undercut by the heavy hammer of Blizzard's intentional design. If this is Classic's content approach, then this is retail. It's as narrow and shallow as can be, even when the depth of class design is incredible and the actual instanced content is loads more nuanced. The methods through which you're allowed to play are more limited by contrast. Hey, thank you for watching, and a special thank you to the members who support my channel. If you enjoy my content and want to become a member, you'll gain access to all kinds of perks, such as extra unscripted content, shoutouts, and more. Thank you, and back to the video. So, Classic Plus, it can't just be raids and dungeons, right? That won't work for longer than a couple years. Players will eventually get sick of the same cycle of content. Don't believe me? Here's Season of Discovery's population chart, or the best that the players have managed to figure out due to Blizzard's secrecy over actual player counts. It peaked immediately and then drastically dropped off, even when they added a properly new raid to the game. This is in major part due to Season of Discovery being seasonal, it's in the name, and therefore on a timer, making players less likely to invest their lives into it. But also because if all Classic players want is a new raid, they would just play retail.
Bingo.
Oh, but classes are too complicated. Don't worry, you can now press one button just like in Classic. Here you go. Is that it then?
Medina hit Keystone Master with one button rotation. You can hit Keystone Master with one button rotation. They really, really simplified the game. They really simplified the game. I'm gonna be real. Retail WoW has been for the average player, the one button rotation is better than I would say 80% of the player base. And that's sad to say.
Is Classic Plus dead in the water? Well, there's another thing that made it to the water. Turtles. That's so stupid. I'd be remiss to not discuss the turtle of it all. If you aren't aware, it's likely the most popular WoW private server. Private servers are a funny thing for World of Warcraft because they're like harbingers of the future. They predict what's coming, whether it be Nostalrius leading directly to Classic WoW or the many Classic Plus incarnations that will lead into Classic Plus. Once Blizzard capitalized on releasing a classic version of WoW, private servers who did just that gave up their market to a slightly more consistent product. Everyone who wanted an old school version of WoW could go and finally play that officially, and today, everyone who wants a Classic Plus has had some options to peek behind the curtain and entertain some possibilities. Turtle WoW has been a long-running project that sought to bring the most faithful interpretation of what a Classic Plus can look like, instead of just...
Yeah, no, the other people in his group definitely weren't one button rotation. Medina did get carried, but he was good enough that nobody judged. Well, he was good enough that nobody could tell, but he was also just bad enough there was some judgment there. And this is true. T-WoW, 8 years of development, and it looks phenomenal. The first 3 or 4 years was the absolute dog water, but each year on year, it got better, bigger, more content, and it kept getting juicier and tenderer and funner as an experience, allegedly, and not that I've ever played. Hypothetically, I never played the game, but like, it's a genuine experience that is hard to truly explain.
Importing retail systems like Blizzard wants to do, housing, really? Can you name a more fucking tone-deaf system than a fully cosmetic instanced housing system in classic World of Warcraft?
He has a point.
You can. It's called Transmog, and it was also on the survey. Regardless, Turtle WoW augments the classic experience by expanding zones, adding new ones.
Doesn't Total WoW have Transmog though? If I remember correctly, Total WoW has Transmog. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong here.
Creating new professions and thousands of new items and so on. It's essentially Classic Plus in the most reasonable sense, and one that I think Blizzard could maybe pull off. Now, I know that in and of itself sounds pathetic. I think maybe the billion-dollar corporation might be able to match the quality of a few fans, but that's where we're at today.
To be fair, the meme of T-WoW being just a few fans cracks me up, because it is like a team of, I think on the lower end it's 50 people, and I think on the high end it's close to 100 employees working on T-WoW. They're a huge community and a huge dev team. They're very passionate. He's still correct on that. It's an incredibly passionate dev team, but it's not a few people in a cave. I know Medina's been pushing that meme. 5 Russians in a cave made a better product than the $1 trillion company, but it's not that true. They did make a better product, but it's not few Russians in a cave.
This is, again, not because Blizzard developers are incompetent. There's nothing inherently wrong with the development team, but because Blizzard as a whole has no connective understanding of what made classic WoW good. And whatever filters down from management or their creative directors is so diluted and synthetic that it probably tastes like poison to the developers who are shackled to their desks and forced to implement another 1,700 recolors of the same mount onto the trading post. And history tends to repeat itself, with Blizzard suing the developers of Turtle WoW. This is expected.
Also, yo, Jarvan, Danis, and D. Miller, thank you for the follow over on Kick. You guys are legends. Thank you.
Everybody playing private servers must know, the developers included, that this is an impermanent detour. Naturally, the most competent people at Blizzard are their lawyers, so they can utilize this to snuff out the
Actually, this is something that he might be interesting. Activision's law team got let go. This is Microsoft's legal team. This is a company that Microsoft has on payroll. This is one of the best legal teams in the US. Top 50 legal companies in the US, like the top 50 lawsuits, like top 50, not lawsuit, firms, top 50 law firms in the US is who Microsoft has on payroll. They're the people going after T-WoW.
Perpetuated competition before launching their standardized version. Now, that's not to say Blizzard's actions are unreasonable. It's their IP, legally, and they can very well do with it as they please. With that said, I feel as though there were ways to create a more amicable relationship with those creating a product that is at this point more conceptually and systemically interesting than anything Blizzard has made in like a decade. Remember, the people playing Turtle WoW are also going to be the ones playing your version of Classic Plus too. In my perfect world, approaching this situation as some developers have modding would lead to a better relationship with your fans.
I do agree.
But I'm not privy to the facts of the matter, so I will leave my...
And I actually had an interview with John Stats lined up, and a couple of things fell through. But I have read his book, and I still think I might interview John Stats at some point in the future, because I know he did help with a lot of the early making of World of Warcraft in the game. But I do hope that comes back around. And yo, Grinchy, how you doing, buddy?
Speculation there. The lawsuit is undeniably legitimate and warranted. Instead, I'm a lot more compelled to think about the reasons for all of this to come about in the first place. Private servers within the Warcraft ecosystem have always been responses to what WoW itself lacked, doing what Blizzard hadn't or couldn't. As mentioned, it started with Classic WoW and now is revolving around Classic Plus. Blizzard's inability to be even remotely agile as this lumbering, obese, megalithic corporation suspended in the air like an impotent Baron Harkonnen has put them in the undesirable position of needing to retroactively mend cuts that have already scarred over. They delivered Classic WoW years too late, and now they are likely scrambling to come up with a cost-effective Classic Plus. But even Turtle WoW has issues, conceptually I mean. It's a very interesting peek into what Classic Plus could be, but it's also a narrow one, demographically speaking. The population that has enjoyed it is relatively small by comparison to the one that Blizzard needs to attract.
I mean, TOW has 500,000 unique monthly players and 44,000 current peak is a lot of players. But he's not wrong that the official Classic Plus will probably launch with 500,000 to a million unique players on launch day, with probably close to 2 to 3 million, maybe even 4 or 5 million unique monthly players. So we'll have to see how that goes, but he does have a valid point there.
To sustain a full-scale development of a different version of WoW. That's the second, slightly more sympathetic argument I can think of. Blizzard is between a rock and a hard place. If they need to create what amounts to be a sustainable amount of content for a theme park MMO like WoW, they're going to need at least 100 developers on the project. And suddenly, what was held together by shoestrings attached to rusty cogs, lubed up by stolen breast milk, is now a full-scale operation. One that needs a substantial budget and return to sustain. It may not be totally reasonable for the executives to greenlight such a project if we want a version of Classic Plus with a proper content cadence that allows you to play for as long as you did back in 2019 without immense content droughts. Then are you willing to shoulder shitty monetization schemes? The answer should be no. Well,
I'm about to say something controversial. If getting an amazing top tier Classic Plus means adding fucking mounts and pets and toys to the fucking in-game store, not the WoW token. I am for it. I am 100% actually for this, and I stand on that. That might be controversial to people. You guys might be mad at me for it, but like, if me spending an extra $50 a year to get an official amazing Classic Plus, I'm down. No WoW token. I'm against the WoW token. I don't want that in Classic Plus. But if they add an in-game store, fuck it. Once a year, I'll buy a shitty fucking mount. Once every year, I'll buy a pet. I'll buy the fucking, like, the Hearthstone toy transmog. If that's what it takes to play Classic Plus, I'm down for it. But if they sell player power or actual money, I'm against it. Hands down, hell no.
WoW tokens, which likely would be added, whether it be immediately or after enough players have sufficiently sunk costed their way into endgame raiding, may also exist beside cosmetics. There's a reason why Blizzard is considering transmog, cosmetic overrides, as a system to include. We also have seen them cross-port models between versions, which
This is also happening again with TBC Anniversary. We've already data mined the little Exodar pet. We've also data mined another Warp Stalker, whatever this thing is called. I think this is called the Warp Stalker, the mount, if I remember correctly. And there's another fucking Hearthstone effect got data mined as well. So there's another bundle coming for TBC Anniversary. Look, you know what? I'm gonna say the most controversial thing anybody has ever heard. If they hire 25, 30 full-time GMs who are banning the botters and RMTers 24/7, I'll take a WoW token. Fuck it. You know what? I'll take Blizzard's evil over fucking random people swiping and buying gold with like fucking for a fraction of the price or this or that. It's not ideal. It's still not ideal. But like please hire some fucking GMs. I'll hire some goddamn GMs.
which allows them to do the same with the deluge of cosmetic glut populating retail WoW. Sure, this allows for some level of horizontal,
And you can't say shill takes. Everybody in Classic is already swiping. If you guys are gonna get mad at me, you have to get mad at the whole Classic player base. Anniversary has the single worst economy known to mankind. The singular worst like inflation I've ever seen. It's not GDKPs. GDKPs aren't the reason why people are swiping. People just swipe in Classic like by default. I don't want the WoW token. I don't want any RMT at all. Period of story. Any RMT, in my opinion, is bad RMT. But like, if that's what it takes for Classic Plus, I'll fucking take it. And your crooked nipple, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the cult.
repurposing of outmoded content through cosmetic collection, but it also allows them to monetize it to all hell. This is not a novel realization. They added a fucking WoW token to Wrath of the Lich King Classic,
And your OG Patrick, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the cult. I appreciate you.
which was literally just a re-release of an expansion. It was like 4 developers locked in a cage getting fed hamster food and working on a single Macintosh from 2007. That's hyperbole, but obviously the scale of these projects would be different by comparison. Blizzard
I'm not trying to justify the WoW token. I'm telling you guys that there's so much RMT happening regardless that if getting a WoW token, like to be fair, I don't even want the WoW token. I still think the WoW token is shitty. I think any kind of purchasable monetization is bad for the game and terrible. But the fucking dads that make up the majority don't want to farm gold, and they're fucking not going to. It's like, it's a shitty situation of lose-lose. Like, I'm unhappy regardless, but fuck, if a WoW token gets... like, and even that's hard for me to say. I don't want it. But like, it's I simply think that's the future, honestly, being real about it.
needs that wide demographic to even consider a standard monetization model. Let's defer back to the initial topic. What is Classic Plus? Sadly, I don't have an answer. I've heard options and all of them sound holistically unconvincing. Adding some new zones and raids wouldn't be sustainable. It completely misses the point, the appeal of WoW. I think adding new leveling content would be very cool thematically, but a huge time investment for little return. I'd love to see new leveling zones and expansions on old ones, but that can't be the selling point of the game because for most players, it's a one-time experience. And ultimately, the third option would be to make WoW a sandbox, or as close to one as possible. Turtle WoW has already been leaning heavier into this, an effort to sustain pre-existing content while employing the additive formula of old-school RuneScape. It may be the only option that sees the game survive for longer than a year or two. But by doing so, would it even be WoW anymore? If we uproot the subgenre that it in many ways perfected and transition it into another one, how much of that DNA will still be there? In some ways, it's like the ship of Theseus. In an attempt to replicate success, we begin to slowly rip apart the core of the game, reshape it into the version that we always wanted it to be. But in the process, is it the original anymore? How can it be classic plus?
Dude, not even classic is classic. Classic WoW is an abomination to the spirit of vanilla. The people playing Anniversary have bastardized and ruined what classic WoW means. Min-max speed running, billion consumes every single world buff, playing the game at the absolute highest level. Elitist jerks and the most elite of vanilla players did shit like that. It's now standard. I was talking to my boy Mincy, and you know what Mincy said? I'm in a casual guild. We clear AQ40 in 50 minutes. I'm in a casual guild. We clear it in 50 minutes. Yeah, my sweaty guild does 30 minutes. Or it was a Blackwing Lair, whatever. One of the raids. I'm not sure what it was at the time. That's fucking disgusting. That's not casual. A casual guild isn't clearing AQ40 or Blackwing Lair in 45 minutes or 40 minutes. But that's become standardized. The idea of what classic WoW is just ruined. A casual guild takes 2 hours to clear. You know what a real casual guild is? A 2-hour molten core. But modern gaming, modern MMOs, just modern gaming period in the story, it's skill creep. What used to be dog shit is now subhuman. What used to be mediocre is now dog shit. What used to be good is now considered mediocre. What used to be sweaty is now considered good. What used to be elite is now sweaty, and the people that are elite are fucking monsters at the game.
When the plus is subsuming the classic. I would still prefer this though. I would rather see Blizzard swing for the fences and attempt.
Richard over here on Kick. In my guild, I'm the GM. We do AQ40 in 50 minutes and Blackwing Lair in 30-35, and the elites consider us, quotation marks, aimless mid-tier, close quotation marks, LOL. The fuck you mean a 30-35 minute Blackwing Lair is considered mid? What do you mean a 50-minute AQ40 is considered mid? This is modern classic. Might as well be playing retail if you're min-maxing and being that fucking sweaty.
To synthesize the gameplay and design people love into a more sustainable package for the future. If you agree, let's think of what that could look like in a general sense. For one, the entire itemization process would need to completely change. There would need to be entirely new systems added to the game, more interconnected elements in its professions, perhaps even allowing everyone to be every profession and exponentially increasing the amount of time needed to level them up, kind of creating a RuneScape-esque progression. Adding dozens, if not hundreds, of new profession-specific items that enhance your gameplay, building up a world where you're just as likely to go to Stone Talon Mountains as you are Blackrock Mountain. Adding horizontal systems that aren't just facilitating combat, but rather act as entirely new avenues of gameplay with enough depth to mimic that of combat. Things that you're excited to log into and do, and spend weeks grinding without ever needing to touch any of the traditionally Warcraft endgame. And finally, having the foresight and confidence needed to exist alongside player-driven emergence. It requires such a deft hand, such a nuanced and impressive understanding of World of Warcraft that I'm not sure anyone can pull it off. Because that's what RuneScape is. The benefit of old school RuneScape is that it has always been that, but the understanding of how to harness this has only improved in time. Today, our developers are very in tune with the systems of the sandbox, but only after years of trials and failures. It took the game dying, arguably twice, and being born again to iron out a long-term vision. Blizzard has not communicated anything to anyone. I'd be surprised if even the developers know what the future holds for this yet unannounced but kind of announced project. How is anyone to feel confident that they're in good hands?
Like an Agrand over here sweating every new video coming out, making them rewrite what Classic Plus is. No, our idea is wrong. Let's do this new one. Oh shit, that's bad. Let's do this one. Dude, holy shit. Classic Plus is either going to be the best things in sliced bread or everybody's rioting and killing themselves. Like, there's no in between. Jesus Christ.
Hands when they can't even see the hands holding them. It's a maddening process. If there's anything I will advocate for, it's to be honest with your interests and forceful with your intentions. We're not talking old school RuneScape here. Jagex has had well over a decade to become agile and responsive to their community, and has integrated a controversial but exceptional polling system that gives a voice to players that all generally...
And why are we still here waiting for Classic Plus? Buana? What else is there to play? Retail WoW, old school RuneScape, Final Fantasy 14. I'm an MMO gamer. I'm playing retail in the meantime. I don't want to do old school RuneScape, and I'm not doing Final Fantasy 14, so retail WoW. And also because of what John said, I'm not going to read it out, but you guys can read it over there, what he typed.
Agree on what old school RuneScape is, what its future looks like. That's not without plenty of drama, but a skiller, a top-end PVMer, and a new player can all identify the overarching...
And Lux, you have a valid point. We don't do X because it makes it way too easy was a methodology in the past. We use X because we want to make it easy is now the new methodology. People used to want challenge, now they want to make it as smooth and streamlined as possible. It's a valid counterpoint.
Identity of old school RuneScape. The same cannot be said about Classic Plus. The community behind this concept needs time to evolve with it, but time itself is of the essence. There won't be a decade of mistakes because Blizzard's investment needs to be a lot more expensive
and
to create a sustainable product.
Same.
A sandbox, curated or not, is great at repurposing content and creating huge releases out of a comparably small amount of development time. Because old school RuneScape is long-form, incremental, and ever-growing, the developers can release a piece of content that will take months to complete without people batting an eye because they know that it will always be there. It won't be deleted with a seasonal update or an expansion.
True.
That is the subgenre Diffie. Even vanilla WoW all the way back in 2004 never had this luxury. Things were certainly more relevant for a longer period of time, but at this point, that strikes me more as a happy accident than an intended piece of design. The fact that Molten Core gear remained somewhat relevant in Naxxramas could have very well been because Blizzard's developers had yet to fully grasp the intricacies of their own itemization.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's got a point. A lot of tier and item balancing in original vanilla was absolutely fucking wild and all over the place. So he's actually correct in the sense that they didn't know how to balance the game very well at the time. Because even people didn't know how to balance classes very well at the time.
And we've seen as much in Season of Discovery, sanding down the rough edges of item design to facilitate a more linear progression. Now, I want to ask you if just a half-year cycle of patches adding a new raid, maybe a new dungeon, and perhaps even some overworld stuff to do, whether that be a zone expansion or new leveling content, would be enough to retain your excitement about the game. Not now, but years later. The benefit of a classic WoW release is that there are two enormous continents to journey through in your task to get max level. A single new zone or minor expansion doesn't add that agency. Hell,
I do think for a lot of people it would be enough.
Continent doesn't add that, as we've seen with the expansions that followed. So when I say be forceful with intent, I mean that you should, as a huge WoW fan, consider what it means to be playing a Classic Plus. Not now or in a year, but maybe in 5 years, 10. What does the game look like? What does your gameplay look like? Whatever the answer to that is, I hope it's not yet another path to where we currently are today.
It's another amazing video by my boy TheoryWise OS. This will be a video on the second channel. There'll be a link in the description down below. Go check him out. Go subscribe to him. Go follow him. Amazing content creator. I am going to write down here. Classic Plus just needs to be total wow, but official. So, but official and non-stop growing. It's hit the principles of what Classic is really well, and it deserves to be accessible to a larger portion of the player base. Total Out endgame is really good, yes. Post. There we go. All right. And that's it. Great video. It was a rather amazing work by my man, Theory-Wise OS. This is my second channel. Like, subscribe, dislike, unsubscribe, like dislike, whatever. It's my second. It's a clip channel. Thank you all. I've been hard out. Peace.